A reading from the first book of Kings. Jeroboam thought to himself, "The kingdom will return to David's house. If now this people go up to offer sacrifices in the temple of the Lord in Jerusalem, the hearts of this people will return to their master, Rehoboam, king of Judah, and they will kill me." After taking counsel, the king made 2 calves of gold and said to the people, "You have been going up to Jerusalem long enough. Here is your God, O Israel, who brought you up from the land of Egypt." And he put one in Bethel, the other in Dan. This led to sin, because the people frequented those calves in Bethel and in Dan. He also built temples on the high places and made priests from among the people who were not Levites. Jeroboam established a feast in the 8th month on the 15th day of the month to duplicate in Bethel the pilgrimage feast of Judah with sacrifices to the calves he had made. And he stationed in Bethel priests of the high places he had built. Jeroboam did not give up his evil ways after this, but again made priests for the high places from among the common people. Whoever desired it was consecrated and became a priest of the high places. This was a sin on the part of the house of Jeroboam, for which it was to be cut off and destroyed from the earth. The word of the Lord.
The responsorial psalm. The response is, "Remember us, O Lord, as you favor your people. We have sinned, we and our fathers. We have committed crimes, we have done wrong. Our fathers in Egypt considered not your wonders. Remember us, O Lord, as you favor your people." They made a calf in Horeb and adored a molten image. They exchanged their glory for the image of a grass-eating bullock. Remember us, O Lord, as you favor your people. They forgot the God who had saved them, who had done great deeds in Egypt, wondrous deeds in the land of Ham, terrible things at the Red Sea. Remember us, O Lord, as you favor your people.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. In those days, when there again was a great crowd without anything to eat, Jesus summoned the disciples and said, "My heart is moved with pity for the crowd, because they have been with me now for 3 days and have nothing to eat. If I send them away hungry to their homes, they will collapse on the way, and some of them have come a great distance." His disciples answered him, "Where can anyone get enough bread to satisfy them here in this deserted place?" Still he asked them, "How many loaves do you have?" They replied, 7. He ordered the crowd to sit down on the ground. Then taking the 7 loaves, he gave thanks, broke them, and gave them to his disciples to distribute, and they distributed them to the crowd. They also had a few fish. He said the blessing over them and ordered them distributed also. They ate and were satisfied. They picked up the fragments left over, 7 baskets. There were about 4,000 people. He dismissed the crowd and got into the boat with his disciples and came to the region of Dalmanutha. The Gospel of the Lord.
The first reading comes from 1 Kings 12, 26 to 32, and 13, 33 to 34. Jeroboam has already become king of the northern 10 tribes of Israel, and he's afraid that people will go on pilgrimage to Jerusalem, and when they see the king's palace, when they see the temple, they'll decide that they don't want to be a separate kingdom anymore. He'll lose his reign. So he decides to set up 2 shrines at Dan and Bethel, and there he places golden calves. Now the golden calves were probably not intended to be idols as such. They were intended to be the throne where God would appear, much as God would appear where the wings of the cherubim over the Ark of the Covenant met. So God would appear upon these golden calves. The difficulty is that the ox or the bull was a sign of fertility, a sign of the pagan god Baal. So you could easily see how people would get confused. Instead of worshiping the invisible God who was on top of those calves, they began to worship the calves themselves. And it's no accident that there's a golden calf story in the story of the Exodus, because the author of that book is obviously condemning what Jeroboam has done. Jeroboam also set up high places. In ancient Israel, every hill, every mountain was seen as a place where God would appear. You still find a trace of that in the Gospel of Matthew, where a number of important events occur on top of mountains, such as the Sermon on the Mount. Well, high places were also places where Baal was worshipped, very often on the same altar. One side you would worship Yahweh, the other side Baal. And to confuse it even more, Baal in Hebrew means the Lord. So are you worshiping Yahweh the Lord or Baal the Lord? Both of them are lords. You could see where people were easily confused. And so this led to a tendency towards syncretism, a mixing of the Jewish faith with pagan elements. And that was very common in the north. And the very people who were supposed to protect the faith, the kings, were the very ones who led Israel astray. That in the north, the monarchy was not praised by the prophets. Rather, it was the prophets who were considered anointed ones of the Lord. And we'll see that all throughout the history of the northern kingdom of Israel. The gospel is from Mark 8, 1 to 10. A lot of people have been following Jesus, and he wants to feed them. So he asks the apostles, how many loaves do you have? They have 7. So he multiplies them and distributes them, along with a few fish that are also multiplied. How many fragments are left over? 7 baskets. And Jesus fed about 4,000 people. Now this is one of 2 multiplications of loaves and fish in Mark and in Matthew. One is for the Jewish people. There are about 5,000 men, not counting women and children, and there are 12 baskets left over. 12, the number of tribes of Israel. There's enough to feed all of Israel. In this case, it's mostly pagan people who are following Jesus, so there are 7 baskets left over. 7, the perfect number, enough to feed everybody upon the earth. And may God bless us.